The Blood Pact. Deep within the Blackmire forest, there stood a circle of ancient stones, their surfaces carved with runes worn smooth by centuries of rain. The villagers of Vargheim whispered of the Ulvedn, the Wolf King, a creature born of moonlight and vengeance, bound to the stones by a pact older than memory. Every autumn, when the blood moon rose, the forest grew quiet. Too quiet. Then came the howls and the disappearances. Those who ventured into the woods after dusk returned changed, their eyes feral, their teeth sharpened to points. If they returned at all. Lucas Brandt hadn't set foot in Vargheim in 15 years. The village clung to the edge of the Blackmire like a scab, its timber houses leaning into the wind, their roofs heavy with moss. He'd left after his father's death, after they'd found the old man's body mauled in the woods, his rifle still loaded. Now, a letter from his sister, Anya, had dragged him back. They're saying it's happening again. Come home. The villagers watched him from behind curtains as he passed. He recognized none of them. Even the air felt different, thick with the tang of iron and pine sap, the way it smelled before a storm. Enya's cottage stood at the forest's edge, its windows boarded. She met him with a crossbow in hand. They took Eirik, she said. His nephew, 8 years old, vanished 3 nights prior. The third child this month. Vargheim had rules, carved into a wooden post at the village square. Never enter the woods after sundown. Never answer the voices that mimic your loved ones. Never shed blood on the howling stones. Lucas learned the 4th rule that night. He'd gone to the tavern, hoping for answers. The barkeep, a grizzled man with a wolf's head tattoo on his forearm, slid him a mug of sour ale. Your father broke the pact, he muttered. Hunted the Ulvedn during the blood moon. Stirred it from its slumber. Pact? Lucas asked. The man's eyes darted to the forest. The Wolf King demands a tithe. 1 life every 10 years. Keeps the balance. Your father refused. Thought he could kill it. He leaned closer. Now the tithe's overdue. And the Wolf King, it's hungry. Lucas found Eirik's toy soldier in the mud near the tree line, its paint chipped, its bayonet bent. Beyond it, the forest swallowed the path whole. Blackmire's trees grew unnaturally close, their bark slick and black, their roots coiling like serpents. Even at noon, the light here was green and murky, as if filtered through swamp water. He followed the trail of snapped branches and claw marks until the trees opened into a glade. At its center lay a wolf carcass, its fur silver white, its throat torn out. But wolves didn't grow that large. And its paws. They were almost human, the claws curved and blackened. A twig snapped. Lucas turned, raising his father's old hunting knife. The shadows shifted, and for a moment, he saw it a pair of eyes, glowing like molten gold, watching from the underbrush. That night, the howling began, not the mournful cry of wolves, but something deeper, angrier that vibrated in Lucas's ribs. Anya barred the door, her hands trembling. It's testing the wards, she said, nodding to the charms nailed above the window's wolf teeth, rowan branches, dried herbs that reeked of rot. Lucas dreamed of the stones. He stood in the circle, the runes pulsing red. A figure emerged from the trees, a man, but not a man. Its body twisted as it walked, bones snapping and reforming, fur erupting from flesh. It threw back its head and howled, and the sound was human, a scream of agony and rage. He woke to blood on his pillow. His gums ached. When he spat, a molar clinked into the basin, roots sharp as fangs. The village elder, a woman named Hildur, found him at dawn. Her cabin reeked of dried herbs and animal fat. The walls hung with pelts and yellowed maps. Your father thought the Ulvedn was a beast, she said, grinding wolfsbane in a mortar. but it's older than the forest. A spirit. A curse. The stones bind it, but the pact binds us. She pressed a journal into his hands, his father's. The entries detailed a hunt. October 13th. Found the den. Bones of children. The beast is no wolf. It walks on two legs, its hands. God, its hands. The final page was a sketch, a creature with a wolf's head and a man's torso. Its mouth split wide, rows of teeth dripping blood. The tithe must be paid, Hildur said, or it will take the whole village. They chose Marta, a girl of 12, her mother too sick to protest. The villagers led her to the stones at dusk, her wrists bound, her face streaked with tears. Lucas watched from the trees, his father's rifle heavy in his hands. Hildur chanted in a guttural tongue, her voice drowned by the rising wind. The Olvedin came at moonrise. A T emerged from the forest like smoke, its form shifting one moment a massive wolf, the next a towering man-beast, muscles rippling beneath a pelt of shadows. Marta screamed, and Lucas moved. The shot rang out. The beast staggered, snarling, blood black as oil spattering the stones. Then it lunged. The bite burned like acid. Lucas woke in a shallow grave, dirt clogging his mouth, his left arm mangled. The moon hung low, swollen and red. His blood sizzled where it touched the soil. Hildur stood over him, a silver dagger in her hand. The pact demands balance, she said. You spared the girl. Now the curse needs a new vessel. He tried to run, but his bones were already breaking. The forest welcomed him. His senses sharpened every rustle of leaves, every heartbeat in the dark. The villagers' fear was a sweet stench. Enya's voice called to him once, pleading, but he knew the trick. The Olvedin was gone. He'd felt its life leave when his teeth closed around its throat. Now he stalked the stones, his howl shaking the earth. The pact was broken, but in the village, Hildur smiled. The runes glowed anew. A year later, a man returns to Vargheim, drawn by rumors of missing children. The villagers meet him with crosses and wolf teeth, their eyes hollow. In the tavern, the barkeep pours a mug of sour ale. Your father broke the pact, he says. Above the forest, the blood moon rises.